Yes, yes. Let's do that again. Hi, Rob. Yeah.
Hi.
So I am. I've had a great week actually. Maybe a little bit sleepy because I was keeping a very late light night last night. Yes.
Right.
How about yourself? What did you do?
All right. Yes. What time is it over where you are?
Well, right now it's 1 p.m. and
Oh, I see.
I know that sounds horrible. I swear to
1
God,
p.m.
today I woke up and then I saw the clock, right? It says 10 a.m. and then I'm like, oh shit, I gotta talk to Rob. And I was in a panic because I thought I was late, but turns out that it's we're supposed to talk where it's 1 p.m. now, and then my eyes kind of crossed when I was looking at the clock. Yeah. Anyway, I was so dumb. Yeah.
Never mind. So we were going to talk about quests, weren't we, today?
Yes. So I've got this book, my own copy.
Oh yes, I've heard of that.
Yes.
Yes.
It's oh, this is going to be a podcast, so we're not going to have video. So for the audience, what I just showed Rob was The Hero with 1,000 Faces by Joseph Campbell.
Yes. I've seen him on telly a long time ago.
Really?
Mm, a
Oh,
very, very long time ago.
very, very long time ago. Well, is he still around with us? No.
I don't know. I don't know.
Well,
So
I
it's a
yeah,
famous.
sorry, go ahead.
It's a famous book, I was saying.
Yes,
Yeah.
he is. I wish he's still around and that we could I could see him one of these days. Yeah, but before we get any further, I just wanted to talk about my motivations for actually looking into this book.
Hmm.
And the reason is I was trying to write proper female characters.
Right.
Yeah. And so because like in my stories, in the Adventures of Longtail, I think I only have two female characters, and when I sat back and take a look at them, they're interesting characters, but one of them is basically just a guy in a dress.
Yes, I know. That's the big problem nowadays, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
Big problem.
and the other female character is also really interesting, but she's a woman, she's a she's a female character that a guy would write. Like the idealized a certain archetype that a
Mm.
guy would write. And I have no
Yes.
idea if that is something that a woman, when reading that female character, right, would she identify with that character?
Mm.
And so
Yes.
and so and so I've very keenly felt my lack, and that was why I started looking into this hero with 1,000 faces, because I thought I could try to figure out what is a hero story for a woman,
Mm.
and then work from there to write a character that's compelling to a woman.
Mm.
Yeah, and that was like my main motivation for picking up this book, but it since then went somewhere else,
Mm.
as it usually is the case. I'm no closer to writing a proper female character, to be honest.
Right. That doesn't necessarily mean that. That doesn't necessarily mean that your stories aren't going to be good. It just means that they're limited in that particular
Yes,
way. Just like mine are. I mean, I've got exactly the same
absolutely.
problem.
Yeah.
There was one science fiction author who um, is very important in the old solar system, and that's Lee Brackett. And
Mm.
her female character, so she being a woman herself, you can trust her to be able to get inside what it's like to be a woman.
Lee
Her female
Brackett, you said?
characters, Sorry?
Lee Brackett?
Lee Brackett, yes.
Okay, I'm
You
just
know,
looking her
not,
up.
yeah,
Ah, American writer, yes. Queen
yes,
of Space Opera.
yes, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
And her female characters are
Oh,
very,
oh, I
very female. They're
right.
feminine, but
Mm-hmm.
um, they're also very assertive.
Uh-huh.
But you couldn't mistake any of them for just a guy in a dress, as you would put it.
Oh, this is lovely. I think I would definitely try to check out her books.
Mm.
Oh, it says here in Wikipedia that she worked on an abandoned draft of The Empire Strikes Back. Wow.
Yes, in her later years, yes, that was shortly before she died, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. She is definitely someone I will check out. Yeah.
Mm. I have a
Lovely.
page on her in my
Oh,
website.
you do? Okay, I will check that out too.
Mm.
Yeah. Fascinating. Yeah. So so
And
what
also, because we were going to talk about quests, she's very good at that as well. Because
mm-hmm.
her stories tend to involve a search for something or other, a search for some treasure or some secret,
Uh-huh.
or some um, some mystery.
Mm-hmm.
They're often that sort of thing.
So she's the type that would start off with her quest is about finding things. Would you say?
Yes, yes,
Mm.
or yes. In perhaps one of her best stories is "People of the Talisman," which is set on Mars, on her particular version of Mars,
Mm-hmm.
and the talisman is a communication device which has been handed down in a city
Mm-hmm.
since time immemorial, and
Mm-hmm.
it's actually turns out to be a device to communicate with a lost race of Martians in the North Polar region. But anyway,
Interesting.
there's loads to the story, but it does have the shape of a quest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Fascinating. So you know what? I'm gonna since you seem to know more about this Lee Brackett. This is like the first time I've heard of her. Shame on me. Uh, tell us more about her.
She was married to Edmund Hamilton. You know Edmund Hamilton, the author in one of the best authors.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you're looking it up now, aren't you? I can
I
see.
am totally. Uh, I love Google. I can't say that I'm familiar with him.
Ah, well, you've got a treat in store. Some of his stuff is really, really good.
Mm-hmm. Wow, sounds like more homework for myself.
Hmm.
Yes. So tell us more about Lee Brackett.
Um, a lot of her stories, the best stories, are set in the solar system, which is
Mm-hmm.
why I like them.
Mm-hmm.
And her version of Mars is often compared to Barsoom by Edgar
Mm.
Rice Burroughs.
Mm.
You know about that, don't you? I should
Right.
think.
Yes. Yes. Wow. Interesting.
But there's an important difference in atmosphere, and that Burroughs's Mars is basically, I would say, cheerful.
Mm-hmm.
It's cheerful and positive.
Very
Uh,
campy.
yeah, but Lee Brackett's Mars is more brooding and sinister.
Oh.
And another big difference is that Edgar Rice Burroughs as Martians are fairly advanced scientifically, and they have flyers.
Mm-hmm.
They can
Yes.
fly through the air,
Mm-hmm.
and they get places quite fast. Whereas in Brackett's Mars, the people are usually on foot or riding various forms of beasts. So
Oh.
they're at a lower technological level most of the time,
Mm.
although there are pockets of mysterious super science lying around.
I feel like that perfectly describes my Mars.
Yes, with the pockets of advancement. Yes, it does. I agree.
Oh my! I definitely have to check out Lee Brackett then. Yeah.
Mm.
Hmm.
The challenge for writing a quest story is if you're like Hector Rice Burroughs and you've got these flyers and they go really fast through the air, how can you avoid getting to your destination too quickly and not having enough of a story? And he gets around that partly by the fact that the nomadic green Martians often shoot the flyers down before they manage to get there. So if you're shot down, you have to have lots of adventures on foot, you know. There is that. But even so, I think it's quite an achievement on his part to have this such an advanced society and yet have so many quite basic adventures with lots of danger in them. He manages to combine the two in ways which I would have thought were pretty difficult.
Yes.
Whereas with Lee Brackett, it's more understandable. You're bound to have adventures if you're on a Mars with lots of tribes fighting each other and so on, you know.
There's a lot of potential for conflict in Lee Brackett's Mars, it sounds like. Yes, I do. I do find that on my end that I'm sorry, I'm kind of recovering from like a cough, so.
So am I actually.
It's that time of the year, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. So I do find that when I'm writing a story, like half my time is spent throwing obstacles in my character's way. And then the other half is trying to get them out of it.
Yes, that's fair enough, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's just trying to really engineer the conflict in an interesting way that makes sense.
Yes, and it has some meaning to it, because if it's just meaningless fighting, then it starts to be uninteresting, doesn't it?
That's true. There has to be a reason why they're in that conflict. And in my, not the last one that I sent you, but the one before that, there was a scene at the very end where the characters were going through to they basically had a car chase. In movie terms, it's called a car chase. Like something is chasing, the characters, and they're running, and that was that scene at the end of it. And for me, the reason was for that there was no real meaning for that particular scene except that there's something that would happen because in my Mars, the desert is supposed to be a really dangerous place. And a large group of people moving through the desert would attract some kind of danger in some way or in some shape or form. And part of the reason for that particular scene is to introduce some of that local fauna, so to speak, to the readers.
Yes. That's fair enough, because part of life is trying to expand out of your own territory into adjoining territory and feeling your way into the unknown.
Yes.
So you're bound to get into trouble when you do that.
Yeah. And for me, I mean, just tying back to the hero's journey, which I wanted to talk about is so Joseph Campbell, he had a very interesting breakdown for a hero's journey. It starts with the call to adventure, which is when Gandalf knocks on the door of Frodo.
Yes.
Right, and and that was the start of the adventure because of the ring.
Yes.
And other things like uh, well, I mean, the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Was it the C.S. Lewis Narnia first book? Stepping into Narnia, that was the call to adventure. They could have just closed the wardrobe, and that would have been the end of it. But in both these cases, both heroes heeded the call of adventure, and that sets the second part called the I think Joseph Campbell calls it the initiation. And I find it very interesting because in his diagram, the initiation is on the bottom. It goes to the bottom. Uh, and to me, that's very interesting on its own because, yes, the initiation part is all about the conflict, which we just spoke about.
Mm. You mean,
And
yes, the conflict between oneself and a different environment.
yes,
You mean, yes.
whichever that conflict, whatever form it comes in, that's where the hero struggles. And then the return, the end part, well, it's not really the end. It's just the next step. The next step is the return, and this is where the hero brings the object of the quest to a close. And the fascinating part for me is here he says that oftentimes the return is much more traumatic for the hero than the quest itself.
Mm.
And I was quite struck because it's true, isn't it?
Because you've been changed by your experience, so there's no, in a way, there is no return.
Yeah,
because you're no longer the person you used to be.
very true. That's very astute. So Frodo, for instance, he could not go back to the Shire.
No, well, he couldn't stay there anyway. He could go back, but he no longer fitted in the way he used to.
Yes, and that was precisely the point that Joseph Campbell made, which is that the reintegration into society can oftentimes be much more challenging than the actual quest itself.
Mm.
Yeah. And I thought about a lot of and at this point I was thinking like of those war veterans that came back from whichever war that they fought in, and that is absolutely very true for them.
Yes.
Reintegrating back into society was a monumental task.
Yes.
Many of them still failed.
Yeah, it's difficult to sit down to a 9-to-5 job when you've been risking your life in battle.
And that actually was what that observation was what actually made me want to dig further into the myths, archetypes, because it seemed to me that there's a lot of tie-in to real life, to how humans live life, and one of the examples that he cited, which really made me think, was there's an entire class of myth. I can't remember the name, what they call it, but it's about going down into the underworld.
Yes. Like Orpheus and so on.
Eurydice.
Eurydice. Yes.
Eurydice. Yes, that was precisely the one that I was thinking of because so Eurydice died, and Orpheus went down to the underworld to look for her. On the way up, he was not supposed to look behind him and look at Eurydice, because if he does so, then Eurydice
she's lost forever. Yes,
exactly. And so here's the interesting thing, right? Because There's an exact same myth all the way in Japan.
Oh.
So it's the story of the two parent gods of the Shinto religion, Izanami and Izanagi. So Izanami died. She is the female, the mother god. She died giving birth to the fire god. So she went down to hell, and Izanagi wanted to look for her as well. So he also went down to the underworld, and I can't quite recall the details of the story, but it was the same thing. So he was leading her out of the underworld, but he looked back, and therefore
Mm.
Izanami was lost to him forever. In fact, Izanami was very angry that he looked back and saw her in a very unflattering state, and she wanted to kill him. So she chased him all the way out of the underworld, whereupon he rolled a huge boulder, and basically that was the end of that relationship.
Yes, yes. Mm.
And so I was relating this to a friend of mine when we were at her place for a party, and she was like, "Oh, that sounds so much like a woman. It's like sometimes we are in a very dark place, and we
Mm.
want our partners to lead us out of that place and not be afraid of what we look like at that time." And so
Yes.
it was very interesting to me because it definitely sounded like Izanagi failed that test.
Mm.
And it was divorce, rolling the
Yes.
boulder in front of the mouth to the
Yes.
underworld.
Yeah. 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 It in myths and legends seem not to dwell too much on success. There's got to be some sort of failure.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Epic of Gilgamesh. I don't know if you know about that one. It's a Mesopotamian
Mm-hmm.
legend,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the Gilgamesh is sort of the Sumerian version of Noah.
Mm.
There's
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, no, he isn't, but somebody he knows is.
Right.
That's a big flood and so on. But Gilgamesh himself goes on a search for eternal life, and he finds he finds a plant which is going to give him eternal life if he eats it. But he doesn't eat it straight away. He decides to bring it back with him. Goodness knows why, and then eat it when he's at home. But of course, while he's on his way back, he puts the plant down, and a snake comes and steals it from him, and that's that. So end of quest, So,
Yeah, that's really interesting, right? Because sometimes we can be afraid of success.
mm,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I'm like, dude, you got a plan to immortality, and you want to wait till you get back home.
yes. Perhaps he secretly was afraid of eating it. Perhaps he didn't know what he would do with immortality if he got it.
Yeah, that could
It's
well be
just,
true.
you don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, but yes, that was my motivation for seeking out um, the hero archetype,
Hmm.
and that was why I wanted to. That was basically what I wanted to talk about. But the quest might have different meaning to you, Rob. And so, what is a quest to you?
I found it quite difficult actually to think of examples of an actual quest apart from Lee Brackett's. Um, some of her stories are really about quests. Like, for example, The Moon That Vanished is the
Mm-hmm.
story of a quest on the planet Venus
Mm-hmm.
for somebody. Somebody is looking for something that he calls the moon fire. The idea is that Venus had a satellite that crashed onto its surface in prehistory,
Mm.
and there's some sort of wealth to be found on the remains of this satellite. So that's a quest.
Mm-hmm.
And also a quest for treasure.
Mm-hmm.
is a theme. I don't find it very often, actually, but there is one good example, Thunder Moon by Edmund Hamilton, Lee
Mm-hmm.
Brackett's husband.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a quest for some sort of treasure. I can't remember exactly what form it takes. On the Uranian moon Oberon, which is the thunder moon of the title. It's very volcanic, and there are strange fiery creatures there.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very good story, but it's not only a quest for the treasure itself. It's also a quest for a reason for employing old out-of-work spacemen who, for some reason or another, feel they're out of a job because of changes in technology, more automation, whatever.
Okay.
And they go on this quest to try and show that they're still useful.
Mm-hmm.
So it has two sides to the story.
So it's a glorified midlife crisis.
Yes, I would say that's quite a good way of putting it.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of this theme of quest is interesting, not so much for successful examples, but for unsuccessful examples or counter examples. I was thinking not just of science fiction, but also sometimes it's not so much a quest as the opposite of a quest. Like in Frederick Forsyth's The Day of the Jackal, which is about a plot to assassinate President de Gaulle of France. We know that he didn't get assassinated, so we know that the plot is going to fail.
Right.
So it's really the opposite of a quest. It's something you know the end of. And
it's
the
sort of a
only
doom
interest
story.
in reading the book is how is it going to fail.
Right. Yeah.
So that's kind of the exact opposite of a quest.
You know, it's interesting. I kind of share your observation on quest for science fiction stories. There aren't that many science fiction stories with quests.
No, not traveling quests anyway.
No, not
There's
traveling quests. Yes, that's true. Yes.
Quests to find the truth of something, or conceptual breakthrough stories like Philip K. Dick's novel Time Out of Joint, where somebody's thinks he's living in the 1950s, and it turns out he's living in the 1990s, and he's in a controlled environment.
Right. Yeah.
They're fooling him because he's got a strange ability to predict where enemy missiles will land, but they don't dare tell him that he's doing that because he might get too nervous and stop doing it. So they build a scene for him, so he thinks he's in the 1950s and he's solving newspaper puzzles. He's not really. He's predicting where these missiles are going to hit, but he sees it in the form of a newspaper puzzle, and he just sends the result in, and he's a winner every day, and so they congratulate him on winning, and they don't tell him that he's actually saving the world because he'd be too nervous then.
That is a very disturbing premise.
It's very disturbing, but the quest there is really finding out the truth.
That's true.
It's not going anywhere. It's finding out something.
No, yeah. Because when I was trying to think of something that I could map onto that's a lot more obvious to like a science fiction version of the Lord of the Rings. There really isn't that many.
No.
And I was thinking like for instance, like the Foundation series is very different.
It's the charm of the Foundation series is that it's more ramshackle in a way. It's more it's less tightly plotted.
It's a lot of what ifs, is what I think. Yeah. It's a giant what if. I mean, the idea of the Galactic Empire is is really cool, and the way I look at it, he was uh, Asimov was basically just like writing like a grandiose version of the Roman Republic, really.
Yes.
Uh, and it was basically more like it was basically a retelling of the fall of the Roman Republic, to be honest. And it
Mm.
has less of that um, structured narrative that a normal quest based kind of a story would entail. And
Mm.
I do admit I struggle trying to think of, like, even for Arthur C. Clarke or any of the standard science fiction writers, I struggle to come up with a with a story that kind of maps closely to Lord of the Rings in terms of the
Yes.
structure.
Well, actually, Arthur C. Clarke's novel *The City and the Stars*
Mm.
does have a quest structure. It's more a quest for um, uh, discovery.
Mm.
The last city in the world that's so well balanced that people just live their lives in it, and this young chap wants to get out and find out what's outside.
Mm-hmm.
That's a sort of quest for discovery, and the first journeys to another planet are also quests for discoveries. The first journey to the moon, the first journey to Mars, that
Yes.
sort of thing.
Yes.
H.G. Wells' The First Men in the Moon, a quest for discovery.
Mm-hmm.
There's certainly no other motivation there.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes there's a quest. Sometimes it's not the first voyage to a planet, but the second. So in Out of the Silent Planet, for example, by C.S. Lewis, it's the second voyage to Mars.
Yes.
And also in Mission to Mars by Patrick Moore, again, it's the second voyage to Mars.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still an early voyage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it definitely has less of that big, bad, the big bad I have to vanquish at the end of it. Certainly, there's no Sauron character. Very little of
Yes.
that.
Yes, there aren't any Saurons in old science fiction literature that I know of.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
There's a great deal of environmental things that they have to get through, but very little of that Sauron
yes,
character. Yeah.
yes, that's right. There are evil forces. Although, well, one thinks of The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, but he was quite clever in that although the Martians were evil to us, they had
Mm-hmm.
evil effects on us, he was careful to, in a way, give us their point of view.
Right. Yeah.
He sort of said, well, we might end up like them if evolution carries on the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I mean the War of the Worlds. I thought the Martians reminded me a little bit of more like Lovecraft's eldritch horror, some strange, unknowable entity that is just there. Yeah.
Especially at the beginning, especially when they're first appearing.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end, he gets a bit more philosophical and discusses them almost with sympathy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it was. I do feel that the the there's less big bads in the good science fiction. I would have to say, the classic science fiction.
Yeah.
And what would be a good conflict for you?
Well,
let me
The
restructure that question a little bit.
Yeah,
Because obviously in a more fantasy oriented story, the conflict is very clear: good versus evil of some kind or the other, or some struggle. But in science fiction, it is less clear
yeah,
most of the time, as we have already sort of laid out. And there is a visceral, a kind of very visceral thrill to that kind of old-fashioned conflict of a struggle between two forces.
mm,
But as you have the one great example that you just brought up was a Philip K. Dick's novel about a guy that's trapped in a dream world. That sort of
yeah,
conflict is much more. For one thing, is definitely more cerebral.
yeah,
The other thing is it tickles different senses, I would say.
mm.
And so, what would be a kind of a conflict that you think would be I wouldn't say good, but interesting, different.
Yes. Well, I could give the example when you say would, you're saying the conditional. In other words, from the writer's point of view, how would one find an interesting conflict? I can give the example of my own novel Uranian Throne, which I'm
Mm-hmm.
serializing on my site.
Mm-hmm.
The villain there is only partly human. He's partly human, but he chose, for the sake of power, to merge his identity partly with a machine,
Mm-hmm.
sort of a sentient machine. So he's now a sort of hybrid, and his interests really mainly power.
I have to Let me just interrupt. I have to apologize for all the hammering. My roommate is doing something.
Oh, I can't hear it.
You
It's not.
can't
It's
hear
not
it?
hearable by me. No,
that's
no.
that's wonderful. I'm just hoping that the audience wouldn't wouldn't hear it too. It's very loud from where I am. Sorry, please go on. Yes.
Yes. So there is the urge, the urge to power, which is usually, we can safely say, is evil.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems to be a profound urge in all that tends to crop up in life, perhaps because life is a thing that wants to spread,
Mm.
if you see what I mean. And you can either spread in cooperation or you can spread in aggrandizement.
Mm.
So evil could be built into life in that respect, or the possible choice of evil could be built into life. And
So
from there, you can go in all sorts of directions.
wow, that sounds actually really interesting. So how would you classify that kind of conflict? Would you call it like a conflict between choices?
Hmm. Well, if you're like John Wyndham,
Mm-hmm.
for example, you would you would say the conflict is inevitable between species who are competing for the same environment.
Mm-hmm.
And you would say that ultimately uh, there's no possibility of
Reconciliation.
reconciliation. Yes, either you win or the Triffids win, for example.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It's a bleak kind of viewpoint
That
that he
is that is
he
a
makes variable because of his urbane style.
yeah,
But really, it's
that
quite.
is a great observation, I have to say. I'm just because okay, I'm gonna interrupt you for a bit. I'm just going through all the stories of his that I've read. The Kraken Wakes, definitely no reconciliation, even
No.
though they live in vastly different environments.
Mm. But they want to
Yes,
melt the ice caps and
yes,
increase their environment. You see,
yes.
so
No quarters asked or no quarters given. That's the feeling I
mm,
get. The same thing for the chrysalids.
mm,
No room for mercy for those who are different from Joseph
mm.
Strong. Um, the Day of the Triffids is definitely a very good example. The plants are just going around doing their own thing. Uh,
Yes.
the Midwich Cuckoo, yes, that is also
Another example.
very good example.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, you are absolutely right. No,
Yes.
no room for coexistence like that
Hmm.
is the struggle is inevitable. The conflict,
Yeah.
very big,
And
big. Yeah.
that means that there's really no this. It's, as I say, it's a bleak point of view. Either
Mm-hmm.
the two competing species are very different, in which case they're less likely to understand each other,
Mm-hmm.
or insofar as then they do have overlapping concerns,
Mm-hmm.
they're competing for the same things, and so that's
Mm-hmm.
another reason why they don't make peace with each other.
Oh yes,
So,
yes.
yes, the only way out of that is to say that we're all part of something greater, and Wyndham didn't believe that.
Mm-hmm.
And you need a sort of religious point of view to
Mm-hmm.
uh, transcend the competition between species.
Yes. Yes, that is a very is so would so that is a very that definitely is a very different take
Hmm.
um, from a fantasy type story. And is that how you would classify your conflict in the Throne of Uranus? You said.
Well, actually, I do believe that there is such a thing as evil.
Mm-hmm.
That it isn't just a difference of interest or the natural outcome of competing evolutionary urges on
Mm-hmm.
the part of different species. I do think there is such a thing as evil, but I think that it's not much use trying to analyze it because it's not definable by what it is so
Mm-hmm.
much as by the reaction one is supposed to have to it. In other words, evil is whatever it is that one ought to resist. And
Mm-hmm.
you can't find out what it is in itself. All you can do is, as I say, define it by what you should do about it.
Mm.
So, for example, if there were such things as vampires, it would be a waste of time to find out, um, why they exist. The thing to do is just to get rid of them.
so would I be correct in saying then that to for you um evil would just be a label that we put onto an obstacle in our way, and that our actions against this evil, so to speak, is more important than why it is actually there.
No, I, I
Hmm.
think that the idea of it just being an obstacle in our way is more the John Wyndham idea, which is
Mm-hmm.
that the Triffids would think we were evil and we think they're evil, and that's that.
Mm-hmm.
There's no real objective
Mm-hmm.
truth either way. It's just a matter of competition.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that there is something that is intrinsically evil,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that it has this much in common with other ideas of evil in that it's more a question of something we can't know. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, it might be dangerous to know.
Mm-hmm.
It might be that knowing you'd get trapped. The knowledge itself might
Yeah.
trap you.
So
Uh,
so you would be more of a H.P. Lovecraft type of evil.
well, I'd be, as far as the effect is concerned, yes, although he would, as an intellectual, he would probably say that at least if we're talking about the later H.P. Lovecraft, when
Mm-hmm.
he's gone out of just he was very influenced by Edgar Allan Poe at the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
but at the end he sort of set out his own territory, literary territory, and in that he was. I think he just thought the universe was meaningless, and there were forces which were inimical to humanity, but they were just horrible to us, But I don't know that he thought that they were evil in themselves. Certainly in The Shadow Art of Time, which I think was one of his, well, perhaps his best story, the beings from the far past who swapped minds with certain humans. It was horrible for the people concerned, but really it was just done out of curiosity. These beings were just motivated by curiosity.
Right. So I guess what you're saying is that H.P. Lovecraft, his idea of I wouldn't say evil, but his obstacles are more a form of very cold, very alien indifference.
Yes, that's right. Yes, and we're sort of very we're sort of negligible compared to these enormously powerful creatures, much more intelligent, much more powerful.
But for you, evil actually does exist, and it is evil unto itself.
Yes,
it has that attribute of being cruel, of being dark, that kind of stuff.
So I'm in the sort of Sauron type thing. Now, as for how that is manifested in practice, for example, in my the last chapter of my novel, I have that the evil one is trying to is using ideas from our planet in ways which they shouldn't be used. It's all very well for us to have bureaucracies and lawyers and things, but it's because of our deficiencies that we need that. But if there was a planet where people could cooperate without those things, then it would be evil to introduce them. I think of Perelandra by C.S. Lewis. You wouldn't want to introduce lawyers and economists and so on to that society, would you? Well, that's partly
that would be very evil. Yes, very evil. Fascinating.
It would be like building a McDonald's on an idyllic Pacific island, the sacrilege.
That's a very humorous way of putting it. I think I definitely, just personally, I think I do come down on H.P. Lovecraft's side. Even indifference is.
Yes, indifference. Yes.
I mean, I do feel. I mean, I think it's not just a cerebral, like not just a logical or rational conclusion. It's not a conclusion of my rational mind. I think it is also a very personal thing. As an artist, because my day job is art, there is nothing worse than indifference. You could.
Yes.
You could if there is a positive reaction from the audience or whoever's looking at the stuff, that's great. We all want that. But there is equal worth in someone who really hated your stuff and told you why.
Yes. Because at least they're taking some notice of it.
Yes. There is a connection, whether it's a contentious one or whether it's a is a harmonious one, there is a connection between me and the person who is making those comments. But indifference is way worse, because then I feel like I'm just shouting into the void and nothing's coming back.
Yes. Yeah. I know. I feel a bit like that with my website, and that there are so few people who give feedback on the site. Lots of people who look at it. I mean, last month there was 2,700 people who looked at the site, but out of that 2,700, you know, I can count on the fingers of one hand the people who actually contribute to it. Or
Yeah. So
yeah.
so here's a shout out to the audience who's going to be listening to this. Please give us feedback. Anything.
Yes.
Anything. You know?
Yes. That's right. Otherwise, we'll think that you're triffids or something if you don't do that.
Yeah. So I think this so because we have like 10 more minutes, and because I want to keep this from overrunning. So as a timekeeper, it's like 10 more minutes. Is there anything you want to say to the audience other than give us feedback?
I could say, because to get back to the theme of quests, I could say that it's partly that an author, even if he doesn't set out to write a quest story, he often wants to hold back his conclusions just for dramatic reasons. So it's like, well, even if you're not writing fiction, if you're writing non-fiction, you want to draw all your themes together in the last chapter, don't you?
Yes.
So that has a sort of linear quality of leading to a quest. But as for the journey type of quest, I thought of another example, but it's not in old solar system literature. It's actually interstellar literature. An author called E.C. Tubb wrote the Dumarest saga about someone who had left Earth as a very young man, or perhaps as a child, and he's spending the rest of his life trying to find his home planet again. And the galaxy is populated. This must be very, very far in the future. All sorts of societies all over the galaxy, and there's no overarching political structure. It's just, each world rules itself, and he goes on and on and on trying to find out where Earth is. It's quite moving in a way.
Wow.
It's a very long saga. It's probably more than 20 books.
Ooh.
Yeah, I've read some of them. I haven't read all of them. It's quite good, but I don't think he ever does find Earth.
That is kind of sad. That is very sad. That's like E.T. or Robinson Crusoe without a good ending.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So there we are.
Well, on that happy note, Rob, what topic would strike your fancy? What would you want to talk about next?
That's a difficult one. Difficult one. I'll say one possibility is series. That is to say, what are the problems in writing a series of stories, or a series of novels?
As in the difference between a standalone book versus something like, well, The Lord of the Rings with book 1, book 2, book 3.
Yes. Well, that's just really one big book, isn't it?
Yes.
Whereas the Barsoom books is 10 volumes of books that all set on in a common background.
Oh,
That's
that
one.
is interesting.
That's
Okay, that is actually a great topic. That is a very author-centric topic, really. Yeah.
because people, readers want more. If they like something, they want more, don't they? But
Mm-hmm.
there's a danger in getting stale, obviously, or formulaic.
Yes, our old friend, Arthur Conan Doyle,
Mm.
got really sick of
He
Sherlock Holmes.
got fed up. Yeah, got fed up with his own creation. Yes, yes.
Yeah, fascinating. Okay, that sounds like a great topic. Actually, I was wondering if we could have an introduction with one of the other authors on your side, Dylan.
Yes. You been talk with via Skype with him as well?
Yeah, so it would be wonderful if you could make an introduction. First, we could do it by email, and then we could get in touch, and yeah, I could find out
Yeah.
more about him and see if he would not mind joining us at the fireside.
Yes. Now this is a technological point which I don't know. Can you have a Skype session with more than two people at once?
Yes, I have done it before, so I know it works. I have to find out how to do it again, but yeah, it's
So
definitely possible.
I could find out if he agrees in principle to a
Mm-hmm.
three-way
Yeah,
Skype session.
that would be that would be really exciting.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just making a note now.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Wonderful. Well, it's been a really pleasant chat. The conversation definitely went places. I felt it. I will I would definitely check out Lee Brackett for sure.
Yes,
Her
you'll
mask
enjoy
sounds a lot like
her
my
stuff.
mask. Yeah.
Yeah, I would recommend People of the Talisman and also The Secret of Sinharat.
The
And
Secret of Sin. I already People of the Talisman. Yes, I have that. I have that up on my screen. And what was the other one?
The Secret of Sinharat.
Secret of
Look at my page
Sin.
on Lee Brackett, and you'll see them all. You'll see a guide to the various um, her various works there.
Wonderful. I will check it out for sure. All right, Rob. It's been great, and I hope next week is great for you too. Oh, wait. Before we end this,
Yes.
let me think. Okay, well, I do hope you have a great week ahead, and I'm going to stop the recording here,
Yes.
but don't go off Skype yet.
No.
All right. Okay.